MomFit with Joe Peters. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network and the Her Network on the Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download the Single TV app in the respective iOS and Android app stores. While you are downloading, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Singo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV, Roku, and Roku Stick in all smart TVs since 2016. Welcome to this monthly show. Today, I am very excited to have Alex here with me because we are going to be talking about a topic that is very close to my heart. And some of you that are being raving mama fans and are being here with me know my story with breastfeeding and know how much I struggle and know how much I learned that I need somebody like Alex in my support team when I was pregnant so I didn't have as much issues. And Alex is we're going to be chatting about how breastfeeding doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I love that because that is one of the themes of my coaching this year with my clients is remove that all or nothing mentality that society is pushing on us, and the reality is that all or nothing only move us towards failure because it's very hard to have it all, and then if the only other option is nothing, then we are always feeling that we are failing. So Alex is a IBCLC, and is a international board certified lactation consultant. That is the IBCLC. That is the only kind of lactation consultant that I personally recommend mamas to work with because the term can be a little wishy-washy. But if you need one, like Alex, IBCLC, she's also a mother of two. And she wants to help mothers to be seen, heard, and validate while helping to reach their breastfeeding goals with a non judgmental, supportive, and holistic approach. With the birth of her first child and her own challenge breastfeeding him, high five, Alex, we already start in a common field. She found her passion for lactation support and education. She has dedicated to ensure that her mamas feel well supported and confident in how they feed their baby. She owns and operates her private practice in Ontario, Canada. So, Alex, thank you so much for being here with us. Welcome. And let's gonna start with you sharing a little bit more about that experience of your first child and your own challenges and how that sparked that magic in you to say enough is enough. Nobody else need to struggle like I did.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. When I was pregnant with my first baby, this was back in 2019, I just had this deep desire that I was going to breastfeed him. I didn't really know why. I didn't grow up seeing other people breastfeed actually. It wasn't part of my like I knew my body was going to make milk for him and I wanted to feed him and that's kind of all I knew. So I did take a prenatal breastfeeding class. I waited a really long time, 38 weeks pregnant. And at that point, I had Braxton Hicks. I was crampy. I spent the whole class bouncing on a birth ball. So I didn't pay much attention. And then when he was born, we had a lot of difficulties. It was painful and he wasn't removing milk that well. So it was affecting my supply. And I was like, well, it's probably supposed to be this way. It's probably supposed to just hurt. I'm supposed to just figure it out. And I had a few weeks. She was like, you should probably go see somebody. She wasn't sure how to help me. She's like, go see a lactation consultant. And so I went to see a lactation consultant and she gave me some support. She helped actually find the root cause of the issue. But it was through my experience with her is what kind of catapulted me into this because I never we weren't the best fit. I'll put it the right fit for each other. And so while she did help us get to the root of the issue, I never actually left feeling like, okay, I have a plan forward. I was like, I'm still going to feed this baby my milk. I'm going to figure it out. And so just like many other moms, and it might have been similar to your experience, I jumped online. I was like, well, there's got to be some information here to help me. And it was basically through that process of just learning more about it. My background is in nutrition. I've always been a biology nerd. I was like, this is really interesting. And then I learned, like, this is how you can solve someone's problems in a, a very simple way. And I just, yeah, it was just so, um, it just made, at 4 months postpartum, I decided to,
Wow.
yeah, change careers,
Uh,
go back to school.
and that means how much, like, that was your true calling, right? That
Yeah.
touched you so much, because there's so many things that I love what you said. The first one is, one of my core values in MomFit is, we as moms need a support system. We as moms, I always see ourselves as the head coach. So we are the head coach of our pregnancy, of our baby, but there is not one head coach in the world
Yeah.
that does everything and don't have a support team of coaches. And one of those support teams that I absolutely 100% recommend all my clients and tell all the mamas that I know is a lactation consultant, especially an ICBLC. And one of the things that I love what you said with your experience is that this is one of those times that is worth it for us to take the time to find the right fit. It's not just, oh, I'm gonna just get the first lactation consultant that, when happened to, in the times that happened to you or me, where we are in the moment after we have the baby, having the problems, having the pain, baby not gaining weight, then we don't sleep deprived, we don't have a lot of luxury. So we're like, whatever, I'm gonna just take the first one. That is why it's important to start doing it when we are pregnant, so we can have the time and the energy to talk with a couple of them and see who is going to be aligned with my values, with my journey, with my goals, so that they actually become a support team for you. Because in your story, she was giving you information, but you didn't feel that she was in your support team. You didn't feel that she had your back. And on those vulnerable times, that is so, so important. So thank you so much for sharing that. And my experience was very similar. You actually were a little ahead of me, because I didn't even take the class when I was pregnant. I just was like, I'm gonna breastfeed, and then my baby had a lip tie and a tongue tie,
Yeah.
so we didn't transfer meal. My baby was not gaining weight, and the postpartum was a very challenging time for me. So Alex, let's gonna go deep into that part of how the moms can start knowing that they can 100% change their experience, um, and don't have to feel that they have a all or nothing when breastfeeding. And what do you mean with all or nothing while was breastfeeding? Let's gonna start there, and I think that we're going to go into a very interesting topic there.
Yeah. So what I mean by it doesn't have to be all, if you are making the decision to breastfeed your baby, to offer breast milk, and you come up with challenges along the way, and maybe you don't have the right support, or maybe you don't find the right support, and you think, oh, well, that means that's it, and I just have to, wean and switch to formula. There's more options. You can combination feed, and that's absolutely something that myself and other IBCLCs would help you with. It's not just we're all about just breast milk. We're infant feeding specialists, and you absolutely have options when it comes to feeding your baby. Your mental health is important. Your goals, your desires, what works for your family is important. And we want to make sure that you can balance that you're feeding your baby in a way that feels good to you. So I have many of my clients come to me, they might be combination feeding already, they're supplementing with some formula, and some they just want to keep going. It works for them and it works. There's other people where, they don't want that. They want to, get to exclusive breast milk, and then that's where, I do my detective work and find out so we can bring up the supply to help reach their goals. So it never has to be completely just one or the other.
And I want to hear your opinion on that, because for me, that was, um, and I was blessed to have a lactation consultant that gave me some support after. But my feeling from the pediatricians and the doctor's appointment when he was not gaining weight was, I felt that they were pushing me completely into formula. And then I also, because got Google, I also hear and I see so many of my moms that go to that plan without a holistic plan, and then when they start facing is the baby start preferring the bottle and the formula, so they go into a non-ending cycle of struggle. So I came home and I'm like, it doesn't have to be like that. And I will actually tell you, we did it like for, I'm a little OCD too, so we probably did a little over that what my ICBL, my lactation consultant wanted, but we decided to say, okay, the formula is going to be to stop the bleeding while we establish the supply that is going to take between 12 and 16 weeks. And then we did triple feeding, and we start getting used to it into, yeah, it's a lot harder. But I also believe that sometimes we don't explain those options because sometimes doctors and lactation consultants make the decision for the mom that, oh, that is too much, that is too much effort. So they just, with their best intention, try to give you the easiest solution, but the easiest solution sometimes is not the one that is aligned with your goals. Like, for example, the easy solution for me, yeah, my life would be a lot easier those 3 months if I was relying a lot more in formula, and then that will not match my goals that was making breastfeeding work for us. So I want to go deeper into that with how moms can start understanding this, because I want to hear your opinion and your advice on this, on how they can start preparing during pregnancy as much as possible with information. And then also, one thing that is very close to my heart is breastfeeding is a natural thing. That doesn't mean that is easy and like abracadabra just going to happen. So let's gonna talk on those two topics, please.
Okay, that you said so many amazing things, and I just want to touch on something. The the other professionals, the medical professionals or a lactation consultant, someone will make the decision for the mom. Is like what, they think they're giving them the easy way out, and this is where it's so important that if you find yourself in a situation where you've got a recommendation from a pediatrician, there should also be a referral to an IBCLC, or when an IBCLC tells you something, our job is to provide evidence-based information and you make your own decisions. So you should say, okay, what are the other options? Or is there another way to do this? It's always, it's important to be asking those questions. And these are things that, you can learn about those things and learn when to ask questions and how to make, decisions that feel good to you before your baby comes with prenatal education. It's still something that so many people, they either don't know it's available, they don't have providers who are making, or they just figure exactly what you said. It's, breastfeeding is natural. It'll just come naturally, or I'll just kind of wing it. And the amount of messages I get from moms, or when I connect with my clients for the first time and they say things like, I take a class, or, I thought I would learn what I needed to after birth in the hospital, but hospital IBCLCs are so busy. You don't get the time that you deserve there. So you really do yourself a disservice by not preparing ahead of time, learning about normal sleep patterns and eating patterns. So we know that, you're not on Google, is my baby eating too much? Or is, how long can they be at the breast? Because these are things that you've learned ahead of time in a quality prenatal class.
Wow, and I love that. And one of the things that, because my ICBLC, my lactation consultant, also work in a hospital, and she started her business because she felt that she was like, in the hospital I can just give them this much of all the support that I have because of how the shift works. So I completely agree with you. And one of the things that I like to, I have a engineer masters, and with that engineer mindset, I'm all about prevention and being proactive. So how I like to see it always is, because there is always that little voice and then the grandmas, and I'm like, oh, why you're going to waste money? Maybe you will not need her. So why you don't just wait until after the baby, and if you need her, then you can reach out. And that is, in my opinion, I want to hear your opinion, that is one of the worst mistakes that a mom, especially, and I will not say especially, any mom, because also I want to hear from you. Every breastfeeding journey is different. So even if you're not, if you're a first time mom, absolutely 100% make it part of your baby shower list. Have at least one consultation with an ICBLC. And then if he's not a first time mom, the journey is not the same. You will not believe how many of my clients are like, my first baby was a piece, easy, whatever, and this second one, I feel like a hammer. So it doesn't matter if the first one was, always is good. And my engineer, what I was going to say is, I will always prefer have you when I'm pregnant, meet you, connect with you, have a match, learn a little bit, and know and have the peace of mind that if anything happened when my baby is in my home with me in the first week, on the 2 weeks, then I only have to pick up a phone without even thinking, dial your number and say, hey, Alex, I need help. Please come. That, don't do that. And then with the sleep, what we were talking, the sleep deprivation, the stress, the um, all the hormones, try to grasp and figure out who can help you. So that is my invitation to all of the mamas. And I want you to, you talk about the prenatal and how to start learning. And then now let's gonna talk a little bit about one thing that probably is going to be as close to your heart as mine. And that is how toxic can be for a mom that is struggling with their breastfeeding journey to get too caught up with what we are being shown in social media about what breastfeeding is and what are the standards.
Social media is such a hard place. It's a hard place to navigate on a regular good day. When you're a brand new mom, this tiny little human that you're taking care of, social media is just not a great place to be for so many different reasons. You know, you get the biggest one, especially in my world of lactation, is milk supply. You see all kinds of not just ads for like all these things increase your milk production, but people pumping volumes that are way beyond what is an average milk supply. They've got freezers full, and then you're thinking, well, my body doesn't do that. Am I making enough for my baby? I'm not producing this much. Or I'm pumping a half an ounce. How come I don't have 8 ounces like this person has on social media? And like every day almost, I'm reminding someone of what an average normal, and when I say average I mean normal, milk supply looks like, because babies, they're not drinking 6, 8, 10 ounces of breast milk at a time. So a lot of the times you're seeing it's oversupply. We don't know the situation. Maybe that mom has two babies. If you have two, the body's going to produce more. So it can be really hard. Or then you've got people who, this worked for me, maybe try that. And you've got all these different opinions, and you're not sure what's right. It's a place that I find, especially as a brand new parent, it's really hard to not start comparing what's going on with your baby, or the size of your baby to someone else's baby, your milk production to someone else's. It's challenging, and it can cause a lot of anxiety if you already have challenges with if you have mental health issues, if you're facing postpartum depression. Like it can make it worse for a lot of people.
And I think that's so important because that was one of the biggest issues for me, right? That it was like I was just in the minimum. So I was doing a triple feeding. So I was feeding him, giving him formula, pumping, and the pump was 0.5 ounces. And I will go on social media and see people pumping 6, 8 ounces. And I literally was angry and frustrated. And my baby was already not gaining enough weight. So immediately in my brain, it was like, that is why, because I'm not producing enough. When I could save so much of that anxiety if I understood early enough that if you are breastfeeding and you're pumping, between zero point 0.5 and 2 ounces is a very good output, and you are doing great. And the other thing that helped me a lot after the fact was the thinking of social media is a channel for the vast majority of people to show the best. So you usually don't see the mom that is struggling with their breastfeeding journey sharing in social media that they are struggling. You see the moms that are don't having an issue. And like you said, with the oversupply, even those moms that share proudly 8 ounces on each bottle after they pump for 15 minutes, the chances of those mamas to have oversupply problems are very high, but they don't share those problems. They just share the full bottles of milk. So I love that. And well, I want to go a little bit deeper into having a little bit of confidence and what are some of the many different ways to feed a baby and how a mom can feel empowered with all of them. And one that is big to me and is what is the definition of breastfeeding? Because we hear sometimes moms that are just pumping for any reason and they're like, I'm not breastfeeding because I'm pumping and giving a bottle. So let's gonna go with those two now.
Okay. So I'll with breastfeeding, I'm going to address that one first. If you are providing milk to your baby, milk that your body is making, whether your baby is nursing directly on your body or you are pumping it and giving it to your baby, you're breastfeeding. I've had the exact same thing. I've had clients or people the first question is like, are you pregnant or are you already breastfeeding? Well, I'm pumping. You're breastfeeding. If you are making milk to your baby, you're breastfeeding. So I like to use the language of nursing and pumping so that breastfeeding kind of encompasses both of those things. And then nursing, we're referring to babies right pumping, we're bottle feeding. And so that leads into that the first one that you asked about the different ways that a baby can be fed, because absolutely, after birth, we want to try in that golden hour, that opportunity to have skin to skin to get baby to latch on and nurse. But there are things that can interfere. There are challenges that can come up along the way. Your experience with the tongue tie and the lip tie, things that can make latching on and nursing difficult. Rather than bringing in the bottle right away, there's actually other options that can be used if the baby is having challenges transferring enough milk from the breast or having issues latching on, because we want to, especially if the goal is to be able to preserve and grow that breastfeeding relationship, we can use other methods. So things like spoon feeding or cup feeding. These are actually options. A spoon, literally like a clean plastic spoon, you can hand express some milk right onto it. You just bring it right up to baby's lip, and they feed with, they use reflexes. So their tongue will lap up the milk, and it's a great way to supplement a very small quantity. So in those very early days, cup feeding is another really great alternative if you don't want to introduce bottles. And sometimes, depending on how bottles are introduced, you had mentioned, that flow preference, which we can, depending on what your goals are, like how soon are you going back to work, who else is going to be feeding the baby, you don't have to jump to a bottle right away. You can use a cup feed, which is sort of similar to that spoon, where we're going to make sure it's right on their lip and their tongue is going to come out and lap up the milk. We can use syringes if we need to, where it's just an oral cap syringe. I think, Joe, we had very, very similar breastfeeding experiences because I've personally had to use all of these. Um, Syringes, we can add feeding and have baby is latched on, and we can have a little supplemental system where we've got a reservoir holding the milk or the formula. And then while baby's latched on, we get it's just a tiny feeding tube we slide in their mouth so that they're taking in more, they're getting the volume that they need, but then your body's being stimulated to produce more milk. So there are, all of these things can be done. Weeks is for trying to establish supply, supplement baby, etc. And then there's obviously also bottles as an option, which can be used in combination with nursing. It can be used just on their own. There's always options, and it's whatever's going to work best for the family.
And I love how you take the time to explain them all of them, right? Because in my experience with my moms, over 95% of them, if not higher, only see those two, only are aware of two options. The baby's either on my breast, drinking directly from me, or is it the bottle? And there is so many other things in between that we can do. I actually, when we did the triple feeding, we were doing syringe and we were doing the SNS, the
Yep.
Medela SNS as well. And one of the things that I want to touch now base before we go into the bottle feeding preference and how to balance that out and if that can be corrected is something that I love what you say too, and is that your instincts are always right. And it's important that you advocate yourself for your baby and your care provider, because there is, and I'm very neutral with this, and I think that is a personal decision. There is a big society push into almost shaming moms for trying to push the breastfeeding journey if that is being a toll in their mental health. Because the reality is it was for me, and I will be completely honest. I saved my breastfeeding journey, and part of the price that I paid was my mental health was very shaky in the first 4 months, because of all the stress and all of that. And I actually am excited that I had the choice to make that choice. That I was not felt that, oh, if I choose that, because it was matter of what was important for me, and what is important for each mom is different. So I was willing, and I remember one day in the shower crying and putting the mark and say, I'm gonna try my best for 16 weeks. That is the period, maximum period for milk to be supply established. And I say, if at 16 weeks things are not getting better, then I have the complete confidence that I tried everything that I could, and then I will move in peace to a lot more of formula, a lot more of bottles. And that took us as a hit on my mental health, and it didn't help my depression, and it didn't help my anxiety postpartum. And it was a choice that I made. And I think that for us as moms, it's good that we have the choice, that we have people like you that can give us the options and give us those price tags and say, hey, this path is going to be harder, and these are the risks, and these are the things, and this part is going to be like this, and then empowering us to following our instinct, say, okay, this is the path that I resonate. And I'm not going to, by any mean, uh, want to sound like what I did is the right choice. I also admire and support the mom that says, you know what, this is hurting my mental health so much that I need to find another solution. The point here is that it's our choice. It's not the doctor's choice. It's not our in-laws' choice. It's not our family choice. It should be a choice between us and our baby, and what is best for us and our baby.
Absolutely. And that's a huge part of my practice is making sure that you feel like you're making the decisions. Like I'll obviously have pieces of information that are going to be beneficial, but it's you're in charge of your breastfeeding journey. And something else that we need to factor in when it comes to having those challenges and facing what feels like you're alone or really difficult times in the postpartum is I also consider like the societal expectations that are on our heads as brand new. So yes, breastfeeding is, it can be really difficult and you can feel like, I just want to, either, some people are like, I just need to give up, or some people like myself until then, and we'll see if it gets better. But then we also have that, bounce back pressure on our head. We have the looming date of when do we go back to work? We might have like other children we have to care about, or, our houses aren't clean, and like all of these other things that are on our mind. And then we also, it's like, now I have this, I feed them. And so, a lot of these issues can build up as well. So it's important that you have support from lactation, that you are doing what feels right for you, but that if you need that extra person, if you need someone to like having a therapist, a social worker, someone that can help you support your mental health as well, is also another great addition to your postpartum team.
Absolutely. And I was thinking when you were talking, like, for me, like a few ones are an ICBLC, a postpartum doula, a therapist, counselors, psychiatrist, um, a coach. There are so many people. And then the other one is that, especially on breastfeeding and that journey, is I think that is one of the most important moments where it's okay for us to be, I don't like to use the word selfish, but selfful. And said, if this is important for me, it is okay for me to put 90% of my energy into finding how this work, and I can rely on my partner, on my friends, on my family to help me with everything else, to help me with the dishes, to help me with the laundry, to help me with whatever, with the grocery shop, so that we don't have that all or nothing of I need to figure out this and I need to do everything else in my life. Because especially if you're having a challenging time at the first couple of weeks, it takes a lot of energy and time and emotional drainage for you. Because the other thing that I want to talk with you is that misconception of what is wrong with me. So why I see everybody else doing it so easily, and what is wrong with me? What I did wrong? I hear one of my mamas once say, "What I did wrong when I was pregnant that I am not being able to feed my baby."
Yeah, I hear that too. And my first response is always, you didn't do anything wrong. You you made the decisions with the information that you had. As far as I'm concerned, it's someone else failed you, someone to give you, the information that the other options that were available. And there are instances, biologically where someone might not be able to produce a full milk supply. And even then, did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, especially if you're feeling like you're trying all of the things. Like what I see is a mom who loves her baby and just wants so desperately to feed them. I just see a good mom doing all of the right things. Is something that so many new moms struggle with, and they think, it's that the blame is on them, and it's really not.
And
Yeah.
on that one of the things that I want your advice and your experience with is how the moms can get over. I have one of my clients that we work on this, and is of that all or nothing with the breastfeeding. Because it's like, it's either I am 100% breastfeeding my baby, or I just give up and go 100% on the bottle. And if I'm in the middle, I'm still struggling with that guilt, and that is not enough. And but I want to do 100%. So how these moms can be in peace with that, and how we can help them to understand that even if they do half of an ounce on the breast and the other time is supplementation with other mechanisms, that already is being an amazing gift for the babies and is already giving something good for them.
Yeah, it's any amount of breast milk that you consider significant is significant. Some people will say like, well, how much really makes a difference if there's someone who's, producing a low amount and supplementing with formula. We know that evidence shows us that just a teaspoon of breast milk has millions of antibodies and all of these amazing things to support baby's immune system. So any amount of milk that you deem significant, I'll make up a number. If you're producing, let's say, 5 ounces in a whole day, that's what you produce, and the rest of that milk is being supplemented as formula for your baby. If that still feels valuable to you, if that still feels important to you to give your baby those, then that's absolutely something that you can continue doing. It's Everyone is going to have a different amount that they significant. Some people, where they do have, insufficient glandular tissue, where there isn't enough milk making tissue in the breasts, may never produce more than an ounce or two in a day. So they're mainly supplementing. But we know that breastfeeding is more than nutrition. Be at the breast for comfort, connection. It's a relationship. So those mothers might just choose to have baby just pacified and come on their body. So they still have that bond and that connection. And their baby's primarily formula fed. So there is absolutely, any amount of breast milk that you feel is significant is you can give to your baby. There's so many different options.
And I love how you went to that path with the breastfeeding, because that was a game changer for me on the rocking times when it was really challenging in the fourth trimester. And it was that understanding that baby breastfeed not only for food, for the physical need, that in the fourth trimester the baby kind of don't understand completely that there is outside your body, that you are not as the same person, because the baby's been for 9 months one person with you. So knowing that the baby safest place where it feels comfort and soothe is there can also be a beacon of joy. So you understand that your choice of breastfeeding, a part of it is the actual liquid that is coming out, but that's not everything that breastfeeding is. That you are also doing emotional connection, that you are also helping your baby to regulate, that you are doing so many other things that will take the toll of, if I don't making 2 3 ounces, then it's not worth it. One other question that I have for you, and then we are going to go into what they can do before and after. But the question is, I hear this a lot and I want your expertise on this. I hear some moms that start getting very anxious because they see babies that are formula fed drinking 6 8 10 ounces, and they are like, if I pump, I only pump in 3 ounces, maybe 4 ounces. So of course my baby's not eating enough, because my baby is eating a third of what these other babies are thinking. So why we don't talk a little bit about that, the difference between formula and breast milk, and why those changes on volume can happen as the babies start growing.
Yes, there is something truly amazing about the human body's ability to make milk, and that is your body is just going to change the nutritional composition to meet your baby's needs. So, in those first 4 weeks, your supply is slowly starting from colostrum, which is early breast milk made in very small quantities, to transitional milk, to mature milk, to building a supply for your baby. And right after about 4 weeks, if we haven't had a lot of challenges, and if supply is established at that point, around 4 weeks, we'd expect a baby to be drinking about 2 to 4 ounces of breast milk per feeding. That number is actually not going to change. So that 1 month old that's drinking 3 ounces, that baby at 5 months is still probably going to drink 2.5, 3 ounces. Your body actually changes the composition of the milk. The fat is also a variable, or the most variable, where it changes from the start of the feed to the end of the feed. Feedings at the end of the day versus the morning. It's ever changing, and it's always going to be nutritious. But because of that, the volume doesn't actually need to go up, where it's being prepared based on your baby's weight. And they get bigger, they require larger amounts of formula. So the volume of formula does go up when you have a baby who's older, versus those 2 4 ounces that sort of match a young baby that is breastfeeding. But the reason being, your body is changing the breast milk. Also, if we're not, we want to be mindful of how that baby is being fed. So using paced bottle feeding, because if we're not pacing out a bottle and slowing it down and kind of matching how a baby would feed at breast, then that's when babies can just sort of choke, 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 and like really gulp and drink a bottle and end up drinking really large quantities, sort of beyond what they would naturally if they had that time to kind of slowly eat. But it's largely due to the fact that based on their size.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love the last point that you make, because that is one huge one that I can see. And I want to hear your feedback on how moms that are already there can and if they have any hope to reverse, because one of the things that happen if you are not pace feeding, and pace feeding is, instead of the bottle being completely 90 degrees with your baby, so the gravity is making the flow go, you actually make the baby work to suck the bottle, like they have to work on sucking the breast. But if is that is not happening, and for because you didn't knew you were feeding them like we always see in the movies, the other thing that happens is what Alex was saying, is they gulp gulp gulp, they drink drink drink. And you need to remember that your stomach is an elastic bag. So if your baby start getting 5 ounces, if your baby stomach is this big, and then with 3 ounces get here, but gulp 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 and get 6 ounces, and then next time get 6 ounces, then that stomach memory start getting more flexible. Then when you go back to 2 3 ounces, your baby's going to look like he is still hungry, because the stomach, we already stretch a stomach to be bigger. So if that happened, if a mom is in that journey and didn't know about pace feeding, and then is already giving a little bit more quantity, but is still is trying to get back to fully breastfeed, what are some of the tips that those moms can start thinking about, and knowing that there is a still hope, that they can still course correct and keep focusing on going fully breastfeeding?
Yeah, you can begin to do paced feeding, and depending on baby's oral function, not adapt to it that well. So what I mean by that is, if the bottle was introduced because baby was having challenges nursing at the breast, it doesn't actually eliminate their challenges. So if they have a tongue tie, for example, or they have a poor function of their tongue, and they were kind of relying on the milk to flow really quickly, when we change it to a paced feeding, then that could be a little bit more apparent, that if they're having a hard time removing milk with a slower flow, like on an emptier breast. So that's also something where, in a situation where I'd say definitely work with an IBCLC, because we'd want to have that evaluation, find the ideal bottle for your baby, because we want to make sure that it's not necessarily looks like a breast, but rather is filling the oral cavity how a nipple would when a baby is latched on. So it's definitely, if you're finding you're in that situation, connect with a knowledgeable IBCLC. But feeding method that you were just talking about, where we're basically holding our baby upright and doing the opposite of what we see in media and movies, where a baby's just, and you're kind of doing your own thing, and the baby they have no choice but to swallow the milk. They can't take a pause when the bottle is down like that. So paced feeding, and we want to see how your baby responds. And then you can build a plan with an IBCLC to, whether that is continue to use the bottle, but change the way that baby's being fed, or move right back to exclusive feeding at breast.
And I know that we are being touching 2 or 3 times on it. I want to make a point on this, because it's important that we as moms always think that we are the problem. If we are having breastfeeding challenges, there is something wrong with my breast. I'm not producing. And I want to also take this time to point out what Alex and I are saying, that sometimes it's not your milk. Sometimes it's not your body. Sometimes that is something is going on with your baby's ability to extract the milk. And because your baby is not being able to extract the milk, then you are not getting more supply, because you are not getting enough out. And because you're not getting, the baby's not getting enough out, the baby still is hungry and the baby's not getting weight. So always, that is why it's so important to go with an ICPL, with an expert that can point out. I know that ICPLs will not be able to diagnose that, but they will able to say, hey, why you don't just go and make an evaluation on this? So you also can be seeing all that, because the reality is, and this is unfortunate, but some people don't know this, and they give up their breastfeeding journey feeling that they were did something wrong, that they were not able to feed their baby, when the issue was not that they were not able to feed the baby, but the baby was not able to transfer milk. And that could be solved very, very simply and easy early on the life of kids. I actually had another guest here that is an expert on lip tie and tongue tie, and she was actually sharing how many problems an adult can have when they don't get diagnosed and correct their lip tie and tongue tie. So
It can carry on right through to adulthood, any of the symptoms. And there's other reasons. If a baby is having challenges, that it might not be, related to a tongue tie or lip tie. It could be, but also we want to look at birth. How did your baby come into the world? Was there, did we have any extra interventions, things like forceps or vacuum delivery that can actually affect, you know cranial nerves, how baby feels at the breast, or one side, is there tension in their body? And all of these things, like you said, it can be assessed by an IBCLC, and we can say, this is what I'm seeing or I'm noticing. This is the person who can, provide you the support that you need in that area, because we can't make those diagnoses, like you said, but we can get them to another support person, another team member, to help their baby, because yeah, the baby might just be having some challenges.
absolutely. So now I was gonna go into actionable things. So very briefly, now that we talk about this, but what are some of the, like in your opinion, your expertise, if somebody in our audience around the world are mom to be's still pregnant, what are the top three things that they could do if they want to breastfeed their baby when the baby's here?
So definitely take a prenatal breastfeeding class. So if you have the option to have an IBCLC and meet with them privately one-on-one, that is something that many of us do. And that way you can ask your questions in private. They can take a health history, determine if you might have any specific challenges yourself. Otherwise, definitely take a prenatal breastfeeding class, one that's been written and put together by a lactation consultant, because you need to know more than just positions to latch your baby in. You need to know how to navigate some of these challenges and things that we've been talking about. And the other thing that you can do to help you access these services, if it is a challenge for anyone, is to put it on your registry. And I know you mentioned this early on, and that stuck with me because it's so important. And it's a point that I like to try and drive home, that you can just put it on your registry and say, I want to see a lactation consultant, like help me fund this, fund the support that we need after our baby is born.
I love that. I love that. Now let's gonna go to the other scenario, and is for any reason, like you and me, we didn't did any of that. Now I'm a new mom, I'm in the fourth trimester, I am struggling with breastfeeding. What are the things that those mamas can do now?
So connect with an IBCLC. Don't ever be afraid to ask for support. I think there's a misconception where people think, because we have Google at our fingertips, there isn't going to be anything that they can tell me that's not on Google. But the thing is, Google can't filter that information out. Like, that actually is not going to work in your situation. We should be doing this and try this. And like, there's so many little nuances, and we have this clinical skill set to support you. So connect with a lactation consultant, get support from your family, friends, community. See if you can find other moms to connect with, and be able to have someone where you can just like vent. Maybe they're not there to actually give you breastfeeding and support, but it's just like, hear me out as a mom and the challenges.
One other thing that I was thinking now, when that I was reminded when you were talking about the ways to feed, and that is get very confident with the option that there is, with the concept that there is always options. Like if you are breastfeeding, even there is donor breast milk. Like Alex was talking before about those oversuppliers that had their freeze full of milk. And the reality is there is a big probability that their babies will never drink all that milk. And after a year, that milk needs to be dumped. So there is a lot of those oversuppliers that stock their freeze and put it nice on Instagram that end having to donate their milk. So if you are early in your game, the other one is it doesn't have to be only your breast milk or formula. Ancient Egypt, they have nursing people that will nurse your baby for you. I'm not telling you to go and give your baby to somebody else to nurse it, but you can actually go, and there are places where you can ask for that, and ask for that donation of milk. That makes sense. Alex, this has been so wonderful. I am so happy that the people in Ontario had access to you, and that you came, and that you have this beautiful journey of normalizing breastfeeding and normalizing what is normal. I want to ask you, one, if you could give advice to these moms that are watching us, that had this dream of breastfeeding their babies like you and me, what would be your advice to them? And also how they can connect with you, if they resonate with you, with your energy, how they can connect with you.
So I would say don't be afraid to reach out. I think so many people think I'm just supposed to be able to know how to do this. I should be able to figure it out myself, or they think they're being a burden. You're not. That's what we're here for. That's what we exist. My passion is to help you. So don't ever be afraid. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me at Motherhood Blooms Lactation across Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. My website is motherhoodbloomslactation.com, and that's where you can read a little bit more about me, figure out how and if you want to work with me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for taking time in today's episode to share this important thing. Everybody in the MomFit community, if you want to reach out to Alex, go to um, Lactation Bloom Motherhood. Oh,
Motherhoodbloomslactation.com.
Motherhood Blooms Lactation on the social media. And of course, you also have my social media handle at Unicorn Mama Coach. Thank you so much for being here, Alex. It was a pleasure. And for everybody else, this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it.